Welcome. Scott here. Here is a quick boss guide for the upcoming LUFENIA Plus event, Wings Graven With Emotion. This event marks the debut of a new character Llyud from Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings. Other featured units are Zell from Final Fantasy VIII, Amidatelion from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles along with Noel from Final Fantasy XIII. We will be fighting 2 terror armor which has 14 million HP each. The turn requirement is 60. The HP requirements is 10,000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the time that the event was released for the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. Firstly, let's go through the LUFENIA Plus orb conditions. The LUFENIA Plus orb starts off at the counter of 10 at 79%. This is a non-cancelable orb. To uptick the orb, you need use an ability that drains your own HP. Units that drain their own HP are Llyud, Queen, Arthen, Vivi, Dark Knight Cecil, Glove, and Renoa. Sidor and Yuri has means of draining their HP, but you need to let their buff to falls off on purpose. As these characters drains their HP, it will also expose them to danger of being KO'd by a stray enemy HP attack if you failed to heal up the lost HP in time. Queen, Arthen, and Glove has immortality, so that they are quite popular options for handling the orb. Now let's proceed with some party setup recommendations. Recommended calls abilities. To ensure that you are able to constantly break them, it is important to inflict defense down debuffs. Example of calls abilities that inflict defense down calls are Ferris, Jack, Titus. As the boss has a huge amount of HP damage up debuff calls like Karasame, Gabrinth, Ignis, Fran, and Maria are useful. Although a bit trickier to use, Aura type HP damage up calls like Queen, Kimahri, and Sid are also viable. There isn't a lot of calls that can uptick the orb. However, as those skills are limited, it might be your best option is to delay the boss and kill them off before you run out of those skills. You can delete the boss turns with Zidane or Amidatelion. Alternatively, you can delay them with Quistis or Cypher. Next, I will be covering units that will be useful to handle the fight mechanics. Like other LUFENIA Plus events, it is always recommended to bring supports for their aura and buffs. They are Porum, Setzer, Agrias, Katesith, Ishtala, Bartz, Lena and Selphie. Selphie and Llyud are great supports for boss no-turns team comps. The HP requirement is only 10k, so you might want to deploy damage mitigation to minimize the HP damage. Options include Snow, Core, Gladiolus, Warrior of Light, Bash, Orin, Zac, Nine and Beatrix. For damage dealers, you can consider the following units: Lon and Ren, Noel, Ace, Cloud of Darkness, Machina, Jet, Chaos, Kain, Zell, Zidane, Vivi, Cloud, Titus, Terra, and Queen. As the HP drainer will be constantly draining their HP to uptick the orb, you may need to deploy a burst healer to heal up unless you are giving boss no turns. Examples of burst healers are Rosa, Lena, Aerith, Yuna, and Llyud. The boss attacks will inflict a Cursed Eye debuff that will increase in stacks as when the boss refreshes the debuffs. If you are playing a hit and counter game, it is important to bring a debuff cleanser. Examples are Yuna, Yuffie, Pernalo and Pain. You can cheese the fight with the infamous Sigma combo with the HP drainer as third turn member. On the screen, you will see a timeline showing the HP thresholds triggers that you need to watch out for. Overall, this is a very simple fight. The Terror Armor key attack is Fife Eye, where it will inflict a frame debuff, Cursed Eyes. The stacks will get stronger as it gets reapplied by the boss. Make sure you cleanse off the frame debuff before it gets to V. Avoid get broken by the attacks, as taking these attacks back to back to abruptly end your run. At the 29% HP threshold, the boss will gain a condition where it will start to use Fife Eye Plus, which has a 1-turn AoE delay. With C90 awakenings have commenced, we are officially in garbage time. If you bring those units, you will have a much easier time as those units will have upgraded EX abilities that will amplify their HP damage. You might end up killing the boss while ignoring the boss mechanics. As the skills to uptick the orb is limited along with the debuffs getting stronger as it gets reapplied, it is your best interest to finish up the fight fast. I will discuss more on the methods that players use to handle the fight in the later slides. Now let's proceed with the boss mechanics proper. Like the previous LUFENIA Plus fights, the boss will gain big stats boosts, brave damage, and brave gain reduction auras when you deplete their HP to a certain threshold. The thresholds trigger for this fight is at the start of the fight, 79% and 49% HP thresholds. At the start of the fight, it will boost its defense stats by 200%. At 79% HP threshold, it will further boost its defense stats to 300%. The maximum brave damage reduction auras is 90%. The maximum brave gain reduction auras are 70%. To handle against the brave reduction auras, you can use brave damage up calls like Jack, Sephiroth, or bring a support that have brave damage up like Lena. Alternatively, you can also use the enchant and imperil strategy to hit the enemies for elemental weakness damage. After 49% HP threshold is breached, the boss will become pretty hard to break. So, having powerful attack auras or defense ignoring abilities is useful for the fight. Llyud is a great support who offers auras that are on level with the current BT auras that we are benefiting from. He will enable a lot of C90 characters to abuse their powerful EX abilities. Now, I will be covering the boss key mechanics in detail. The Terror Armor key attack is Fei where it will inflict a frame debuff, Cursed Eyes. The stacks will get stronger as it gets reapplied by the boss. Make sure you cleanse off the frame debuff before it gets to 5. As the boss can gain brave damage reductions auras to 90% from 49% HP threshold onwards, it will be very difficult to break them if the Cursed Eyes inflicted on the character is 3. Make sure you have sufficient damage auras to compensate against the combined reductions. If the debuffs are too annoying, it might be your best interest to cleanse off the debuffs. I have listed down the debuff cleansing options on the slide. At the 29% HP threshold, the boss will activate the following condition: magic power is concentrated in the eyes. From this point onwards, the boss will use the plus variant of Fei. The plus variant has high damage potencies and has an additional 1 turn AoE delay on all targets. It is best not to give them too many turns or you will end risking causing the orb to explode. Other than Fei, the boss can use the Helm Splitter, a single target brave attack that could inflict the Cursed Eyes debuff as well while gain a framed attack plus 50% buff. Now I have reached the last slide of my boss guide presentation. There are 2 common approaches used by the players when the event is initially released in the JP version. The evade, guard and counter option is probably the harder strategy to deploy for this fight. Whenever the boss acts, the orb will downtick by 2. This makes the orb quite difficult to handle if you don't have constant uses of skills that could drain HP. You will also need to ensure you have decent damage mitigation and great burst healing. You also need to consider bringing a debuff cleansing call before the debuffs gets too annoying. I am not sure whether debuff evasion will work to prevent the debuffs. Debuff evasion units are Ignis, Selpha, Aerith and Lena. Most debuff evasion units are also great burst healers as well. The Blitzkrieg approach is the more common approach used by the JP community. With the new C90 awakenings, lots of units will be able to deal huge amounts of damage. Most players complete the fight with boss no turns while nuking the boss down with HP damage up calls and turn delayers like the ones that I have listed on the slide. As Zell and Amidatelion are also featured synergy characters for the fight, doing boss no turn seems the most appropriate way to handle the fight. I have come to the end of my boss guide presentation. Hopefully you find it useful. If you like the video, please give a like. Please subscribe to my channel for future gaming content. Good luck for the fight. Bye.